My name is Scarlett Hayes. I'm 43 years old, a single mother, and the founder of a national mental wellness platform based out of Monterey, California. Most people know me as a therapist turned entrepreneur, someone who took grief and turned it into guidance for others. But behind the headlines and TED Talks, I'm just a mother doing her best to protect the one person who means more to me than anything in this world, my daughter, Sienna. Sienna is 15 now, sharp-minded, fiercely loyal, with the kind of emotional intelligence that makes you forget she's still just a teenager. After my husband passed away 6 years ago, it was just the two of us. We built a quiet life filled with books, late-night hot cocoa, and sunrises over the Pacific. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And it was safe. At least, that's what I believed. My relationship with my parents has always been complicated. On paper, they look perfect retired military father, elegant mother who runs charity events but behind closed doors. They've always cared more about appearances than affection. For years, I kept my distance. But then came the invitation, a grand 45th wedding anniversary party at their estate in Napa Valley. Just family. They said, a celebration. Sienna was hesitant. So was I. But I didn't want to project my pain onto her. I said yes, thinking one night wouldn't hurt. I was wrong. Because the moment we stepped into that celebration, something felt off. And when my daughter looked me in the eye and whispered, "Mom, we need to leave. Now," I realized this wasn't just a party, it was a setup. And the people I had spent my life trying to forgive might have planned to take everything from me, including my life. Growing up in the Hayes household was like living inside a perfectly decorated museum, beautiful on the outside, but cold and fragile at the core. My father, William Hayes, was a former colonel who ran our family like a barracks. He didn't believe in softness, emotions, or failure. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I succeeded, I got lucky. And when I dared to talk about studying psychology in college, he said it was a waste of tuition and told me to major in something useful, like finance. I still remember how he slammed the dinner table the day I told him I'd been accepted into Stanford's psychology program. My mother, Patricia, with her signature pearl necklace and tight smile, just sipped her wine and looked away. She rarely disagreed with him. In fact, she had a talent for making everything look picture perfect, even as the air around us cracked with tension. She was the kind of woman who arranged flowers before a fight, hosted fundraisers for causes she didn't believe in, and whispered that image is everything. I think she resented me for the same reasons she was drawn to me, because I refused to pretend. Then there was Lucas, my older brother, charming, magnetic, but a complete mess beneath the surface. He dropped out of college, started 3 different businesses, all of which failed, and finally crawled back under my parents' roof in his 30s. They still treated him like a prodigal son, blaming bad luck for his failures, while any success I had was met with cold calculation. So I left. At 19, I packed 2 suitcases, took the small college grant I'd been awarded, and walked out. No big scene, no tears, just a silent decision to never let them shape me again. It wasn't easy. There were nights in my tiny college dorm when I questioned everything. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing on weekends and tutoring high schoolers during the week while trying to stay at the top of my class. But I was free. For the first time in my life, I was fully myself. And that was enough. After college, I worked as a trauma therapist for several years before founding ClearPath, a mental wellness platform designed to offer accessible therapy for underserved communities. What started as a passion project quickly gained traction. I built a team, attracted funding, and watched ClearPath grow into something I never imagined. And even as the media began calling me a mental health trailblazer, I kept my private life fiercely guarded, especially from my family. I didn't speak to them much over the years, just the obligatory holiday calls, carefully choreographed to avoid conflict. Sienna, my daughter, knew of her grandparents, but rarely saw them. I never lied to her, but I did soften the truth. I told her they were complicated people. And they were... She asked me once, when she was about 10, "Mom, why don't we visit Grandpa and Grandma more?" I paused, searching for words, because some places look like home but don't feel like it. Sienna, even then, understood more than I gave her credit for. When my husband Nathan died suddenly of a heart attack 6 years ago, my family didn't come to the funeral. They sent flowers, white lilies, and a note that read, "Our condolences. Stay strong." I remember holding that card in my hand and thinking, this is all we are now, formalities and distance. After Nathan's death, it was just me and Sienna. We moved to a coastal town outside Monterey, bought a home filled with sunlight and books, and slowly, piece by piece, began building a life again. I kept working, expanding ClearPath, giving talks, consulting for schools and hospitals. But my proudest moments weren't the ones on stage, they were the quiet ones, teaching Sienna how to ride a bike, reading her poetry under the stars, and watching her blossom into this extraordinary young woman. I thought I had left the past behind. Until one morning, a month ago, I opened my inbox to find an email from my mother with the subject line, "Please come." It was an invitation to their 45th wedding anniversary party. She'd attached a formal Evite with golden fonts, a vineyard logo, and the words, "A celebration of love and legacy." Underneath, she'd written, "We would love to see you and Sienna. It's time for what." I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it without a second thought, but something in those last 3 words, "It's time," unsettled me. My mother never said things like that lightly. Later that evening, I showed it to Sienna. She looked at the screen, then looked at me. "Do you want to go?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "I haven't seen them in years." Sienna shrugged, but her eyes stayed locked on mine. "You don't owe them anything, Mom. But if you want me to go with you, I will." That was the thing about Sienna. She wasn't just my daughter, she was my anchor. And so I clicked accept. I told myself it would be one evening, a simple gesture. Maybe even a chance to close a door I hadn't realized was still open. I had no idea that door would lead straight into a trap. The invitation sat on our fridge for 3 weeks, taunting me with its polished script and gold trim. Every time I walked into the kitchen, it caught my eye like a thorn wrapped in ribbon. My mother had always been good at appearances. Even the invite carried the weight of her expectations: a formal garden party at their Napa Valley estate, catered dinner, string quartet, dress code elegant. Elegant. That word alone made my chest tighten. I tried to push it out of my mind, bury myself in work, in planning Sienna's upcoming school year, in reorganizing the bookshelves by author instead of theme. But the anxiety lingered like a storm on the horizon. I kept telling myself it was just a party. I'd survived far worse. One night, as I closed my laptop and looked across the room, Sienna sat on the floor with her sketchbook, drawing quietly. She had her earbuds in, one dangling loose, and the faint sound of Lana Del Rey filtered through. I sat beside her. "You okay with going?" I asked gently. She glanced up, her pencil pausing mid-stroke. "I don't love the idea," she said honestly, "but I want to be there for you." Her words caught me. I was supposed to be the protector, the shield, and yet, here she was, 15 and already willing to stand in the fire with me. We left Monterey the next Saturday morning. The sky was soft blue, cloudless, the kind of day California brags about. I drove while Sienna scrolled through playlists, carefully curating the road trip soundtrack, starting with Florence and the Machine, followed by a little Bowie, then Billie Eilish, just to mix the mood. The Napa roads curled like ribbons through the hills. Vineyards rolled across the landscape like a painting. But my grip on the wheel tightened the closer we got. Sienna noticed. "You're doing that jaw thing again," she said. I glanced over. "What jaw thing?" "When you clench your teeth and pretend you're fine." I laughed despite myself. "You know me too well." She nodded. "That's kind of the point." We arrived at the estate just after 3:00 p.m. It looked exactly as I remembered it. Massive wrought iron gates, ivy-covered columns, symmetrical rose gardens flanking the gravel driveway. The house itself was a Tuscan-style monstrosity, with 30-foot ceilings and more glass than privacy. A valet in a burgundy vest greeted us with forced warmth, opening the passenger door for Sienna as she stepped out in her pale blue sundress. "Mom," she whispered as we walked up the marble steps. "Why does this feel like a movie scene before something bad happens?" I tried to smile. "Because we've watched too many thrillers." But in truth, I felt it too. The front doors opened before we even rang the bell. My mother stood there in a flowing silver gown, her hair perfectly pinned, her lipstick a shade too dark. Her expression was delight pinned over calculation. "Scarlet," she sang, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like lilac and rehearsed affection. "And Sienna, my beautiful girl. Look at you, such a young lady now." Sienna offered a polite smile. "Hi, Grandma." My father appeared moments later, stiff in a navy suit that looked like it hadn't been tailored since the Obama administration. He shook my hand as if we were business partners. "You look good, Scarlet," he said flatly. "Success suits you." I forced a smile. "So do tailored expectations?" He didn't laugh. Inside, the house was buzzing with guests' friends, former military colleagues of my father, women in pearls and men in cufflinks. A string quartet played softly in the corner of the courtyard, where champagne was being passed around on silver trays. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. I caught sight of Lucas near the pool, dressed in an expensive-looking blazer with sunglasses perched atop his slicked-back hair. He looked like he belonged in a country club brochure. Not in real life. He waved us over with an exaggerated grin. "Scarlet," he said, hugging me like we hadn't grown up sharing trauma. "Sienna, you're taller every time I see you, I swear. You're going to outgrow your mom soon." "Unlikely," Sienna said coolly. Lucas laughed and offered me a flute of champagne. I declined. My throat already felt tight. For the first hour. I went through the motions, smiling, answering polite questions about my company, letting my mother parade me around like a trophy she never believed in. But something kept nagging at me. I couldn't find my bag. I had left it by the entrance table when we arrived, as instructed by one of the catering staff, but now it was gone. I scanned the room, searching quietly, not wanting to make a scene. "Mom," Sienna whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "Where's your medication?" My chest tightened. "I don't know," I said low. "I'm going to check near the kitchen." We found it eventually, tucked behind a large floral arrangement of white lilies and hyacinths, my worst allergens. I was deathly allergic to lilies. My parents knew this. When I was 21, I went into anaphylactic shock at a fundraiser because someone placed a lily bouquet next to the podium. Sienna stared at the flowers, then back at me. "Grandma said they were your favorite." My blood ran cold. "No, sweetheart," I said carefully. "She knows I'm allergic. Severely. These could kill me." That's when I noticed the server near the flowers, young, dark-haired, and looking suspiciously attentive to our every move. He shifted away when he saw me watching. Sienna leaned closer. "I saw him earlier. He was near your bag. I think he took something out." I placed my hand gently on her shoulder. "Stay close to me." Because suddenly, I wasn't sure this was a celebration anymore. Something was wrong. And my daughter, my anchor, felt it too. I didn't say anything at first. Instead, I calmly picked up my handbag, double-checked the inner zipper where I usually kept my EpiPen and antihistamines, and felt the panic coil in my gut. They were gone. My fingers trembled as I rifled through the lining again. Nothing. Not even the small blue case I always kept tucked inside. I never left the house without it, and I knew I packed it this morning. I remembered double-checking before we left Monterey. Sienna watched me. She knew. I zipped the bag shut and straightened up. The lilies in the arrangement beside us gave off a strong, sickly sweet fragrance that made my throat itch. I subtly stepped away. Sienna was watching me with narrowed eyes. "It's not here." "Is it?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the string quartet. I shook my head once. No. For a moment, we just stood there in silence, both of us trying to process it. The perfectly manicured world around us buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. My mother floated between guests like a hostess on autopilot, her eyes flitting to me now and then, watching without watching. I turned to Sienna. "Sweetheart, I want you to stay near me. Don't wander off." "Okay," she nodded. Just then, Lucas appeared at my side, a little too suddenly. He clapped me on the shoulder, as if we were old college buddies. "There you are," he said, grinning too wide. "Everyone's looking for you. Mom wants to make a toast. Come on, she's doing her big speech thing." He tried to guide me toward the center of the courtyard, but I gently pulled back. "Give me a moment," I said. "I need some air." Lucas raised a brow. "Air, you're not bailing already." "Are you no?" I said smoothly. "Just need a break from the perfume parade." He laughed, but something in his eyes flickered like he was trying to gauge if I suspected anything. He gave Sienna a nod and walked off. I waited until he disappeared into the crowd before turning to my daughter. "Something's wrong," I whispered. "I need you to tell me exactly what you saw earlier. With the server." Sienna hesitated, then glanced around to make sure no one was close. "I saw him near your bag when we first arrived," she said. "He was pretending to adjust the flowers, but he kept checking over his shoulder. Then he unzipped your purse, took something small, and slid it into his apron pocket." My pulse raced. "You're sure I thought maybe he was just moving it to a safer spot? But then I saw Grandpa. He came over and whispered something to him." And the guy nodded. "Did you hear what he said?" "No." "But Grandpa was holding something too small, like a pen." My throat felt like it was closing in, and it wasn't because of the flowers. I needed to get out of there. I checked the time. It was just past 500 p.m. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the marble courtyard. Waiters moved with robotic precision. Everything looked idyllic, but it felt like a trap. And the trap was tightening. Then came the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," my mother called out in her polished voice, standing atop the garden steps with a champagne flute in hand, "thank you for joining us on this special day." Everyone turned toward her like clockwork. Applause broke out, and I felt Sienna stiffen beside me. She whispered, "She keeps looking at you, like she's checking if you're still standing there." I looked up and caught my mother's gaze for a fraction of a second. It was fleeting, but it held something behind the smile, something that chilled me more than any scream could. She continued with her speech, recounting stories from their wedding day, their travels, their loving journey together. People laughed on cue, toasted on cue, and all the while I could feel the lilies' scent intensify as more trays of arrangements were brought out from the house. It wasn't just careless decorating. It was intentional, deliberate, and deadly. "Mom," Sienna whispered urgently, "look at the fountain." I turned. Across the garden, near the old marble fountain where I used to play as a child. I saw the same server again, this time talking to a man in a suit I didn't recognize. The man handed him something. The server nodded, then headed back into the house. "Sienna," I said slowly, "I need you to go to the car. Wait for me there." She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "No, I'm not leaving you alone. I'm not asking," I said firmly, though my voice shook. "Please, take the keys. Lock the doors. Stay on your phone." Sienna hesitated, her lips tight, her fists clenched, but then she nodded. "If you're not out in 5 minutes, I'm coming back in." She ran off toward the valet exit. I turned and made my way across the courtyard, weaving through conversations, trying to look like I belonged. My father stood near the back patio, chatting with 2 men in dark suits. As I passed, I caught part of the conversation. "She's here. Give it time." My skin prickled. I didn't wait to hear the rest. Just as I reached the house's side entrance, a woman in a black dress stepped into my path, one of the event staff. Maybe, but she wasn't wearing the same uniform as the caterers. She smiled politely. "Ma'am, the house is closed to guests during the toast. Can I help you with something?" "Yes," I said. "I left something in the powder room. I can retrieve it for you." "No, thank you. It's personal." Her smile didn't falter, but she didn't move either. And that's when I knew I wasn't imagining this. This wasn't paranoia. This was real. I took a step back, turned, and made for the driveway instead. That's when I saw Sienna running. She was waving, panic in her eyes. "Mom," she screamed, "we have to go now. I didn't ask why. I ran. I didn't hesitate." The moment I saw Sienna running, her eyes wide, her breath coming fast, I turned on my heels and ran too. The heels of my shoes clicked hard against the stone steps as I sprinted down the path toward the valet circle. A few guests turned, confused, and someone called my name behind me, but I didn't stop. "Sienna," I shouted as we met halfway near the gate. "What happened?" She didn't stop moving. She grabbed my hand and pulled. "We need to get in the car, now." I followed her, breath tight, legs trembling. The golden sunset that bathed the estate in warmth now felt like a spotlight. I was suddenly exposed, and every second out in the open made my skin crawl. We reached the car. Sienna unlocked it with shaking fingers and threw open the passenger door. "In," she said. "I'll explain once we're away from here." I didn't argue. I started the engine, tires crunching against the gravel as I peeled out of the circular driveway. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of Lucas standing on the porch, holding a drink in one hand and squinting after us. Was that a look of concern or disappointment? We didn't say a word until we hit the main road. My hands were clamped around the wheel, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I rolled down the window halfway, letting the cooler valley air rush in. The car was quiet, save for Sienna's short breaths. "Talk to me," I said, voice low and urgent. Sienna sat rigid, her eyes staring straight ahead. Then she finally spoke. "I went to the car like you told me, but I stayed outside by the hedge, near the side of the garage. I didn't want to leave you alone in there." I didn't scold her, I just let her speak. While I waited, she continued, "I saw that same server, the one from earlier. He came out through the side door with another man, older, dressed in black. They were talking, and I got closer." She pulled out her phone and held it up. "I recorded part of it. I swerved slightly in the lane. What I thought something was off, so I turned on the voice recorder app. I didn't get everything, but you need to hear this." She pressed play. It was grainy. Muffled wind, birds, faint voices, then clearer. "She's allergic." "Right. You said it's serious. Yes, if she doesn't have the meds, even a few minutes could be enough. You sure the stuff is in place? She always keeps it in that front pouch. I took care of it. Now we just wait. The flowers will help mask the rest." Then a laugh, cold, confident. I pulled over. The car idled quietly on the edge of the road. I sat still, staring at the dusty dashboard, trying to process the sound of my brother's voice on the recording. Because it was him, Lucas. He'd been the one speaking. Calmly, casually, like he was discussing the weather. My throat tightened, not from allergy but from disbelief. "I checked your bag again," Sienna whispered, her voice cracking. "The EpiPen and the pills, they're really gone." I looked at her, this brave, bright, brilliant daughter of mine, and felt a wave of nausea crash over me. They were going to trigger an episode, I said, more to myself than her. And without the meds? I didn't finish. I didn't have to. Sienna's lip trembled. I saw Grandpa near the main table. He handed something to the man in black. "I think it was your meds." My fingers gripped the steering wheel harder. I wasn't just being paranoid. I hadn't overreacted. There was a plan, and it wasn't just about humiliation or control this time. It was about elimination. "Mama," Sienna said, using the word she hadn't called me since she was a child. "They were going to hurt you. I know it. I felt it. That's why I screamed. I thought they'd—" She choked on her words. I reached across the console, taking her hand in mine. "You saved me," I said, voice shaking. "You saved my life." Sienna squeezed my hand back, eyes glassy. "You always protect me. Mom, this time, I had to protect you." We sat like that for a long moment, still parked on the side of the road, headlights off, surrounded by silence and falling dusk. I had left that family behind years ago. I had spent my adult life trying to forgive them, trying to maintain polite distance for the sake of appearances. But appearances were never the truth. And tonight had shattered the last illusion I was holding on to. They didn't just dislike me. They wanted me gone. Why? For money, for revenge. To eliminate the daughter who embarrassed them by succeeding on her own terms, I didn't know the full answer yet. But I was going to find out. And then I was going to burn every last legal bridge between us. "I'm calling James," I said. Sienna frowned. "Your lawyer," I nodded. "First thing in the morning, we're going to lock down everything my accounts. The company, the house, and then we're going to the police." Sienna said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, "Will they believe us?" I looked down at her phone, the audio file still open. "They will when they hear that." She nodded slowly, but I could see the fear lingering in her eyes. "I don't want to go back there ever again," she whispered. I reached over and tucked her hair behind her ear. "You won't, I promise." Then I started the car again. We headed back toward Monterey, toward safety, toward our real life. And for the first time in years, I knew I was done pretending. That night, after Sienna had gone to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of cold tea, the silence of our Monterey home pressing against my shoulders like a weight. I hadn't turned on any lights. Just let the moonlight spill in from the windows, silvering the countertops and throwing shadows along the floor. My mind wouldn't rest. I kept replaying the audio. Lucas's voice, calm, casual, talking about my allergy like it was just logistics. I thought about the lilies, the stolen medication, the server's nervous glance, my mother's too-perfect smile, and I thought about how close I had come to dying. My own family. They would have let me collapse, breathless and helpless, surrounded by guests, unable to speak, then played it off as a tragedy. An accident. She always had allergies, my mother would say, her hand fluttering dramatically to her chest. It was just so sudden. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't afford to unravel. Not yet. At 6:00 a.m., I called James Carter, my lawyer of 12 years. He was the kind of man who spoke in legal terms even when ordering coffee. Efficient, methodical, emotionally detached, but also fiercely loyal. When he answered, I didn't even say hello. James, I said, we need to talk. Now. He must have heard the urgency in my voice, because within 20 minutes we were on a secured video call, and I was walking him through everything, every detail. The party, the lilies, the missing medication, the audio recording, Sienna's eyewitness account, the delivery man, Lucas's voice, my suspicions. James didn't interrupt. He just took notes, his mouth pressed into a thin line. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. Scarlett, he said, these are serious allegations. I know, I said, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not emotional, I'm certain. He nodded once. Then here's what we're going to do. Over the next 2 hours, we set everything in motion. Step 1, freeze access to all my financial accounts and transfer ownership of ClearPath Inc. into a protective trust, with Sienna listed as the sole beneficiary upon my death or incapacitation. Step 2, initiate a digital asset lockdown, including cloud storage, medical files, and personal backups. Step 3, file for a temporary restraining order against William, Patricia, and Lucas Hayes, citing attempted harm, theft of prescription medication, and intent to endanger my health. The audio recording and Sienna's testimony would be submitted as primary evidence. Step 4, prepare a formal report to submit to the local police department, with legal oversight from James's team. We weren't going to go in blind. We were going to go in prepared. This will be messy. James warned me. Public. And it may take time for law enforcement to respond. But Scarlett, you have a strong case, especially with Sienna's account and that recording. I'm not afraid of messy. I said, I'm afraid of silence. Before we ended the call, I asked one more thing. James, I said, what happens if they contest the restraining order? He looked at me, eyes cool. Then we go to court. And we let them explain under oath why your daughter recorded them plotting to wait for the right moment. I nodded. Let them explain. Let them try. By noon, everything was in motion. The paperwork was filed. The digital firewall was up. My personal and business accounts were locked down like a fortress. I told Sienna everything. She sat at the breakfast table in her hoodie and socks, hair still wet from the shower, listening with a steady expression. I'm proud of you, she said when I finished. No, I said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. I'm proud of you. You saw what I was too afraid to admit. She smiled faintly, but her eyes didn't lose that edge of worry. What if they come here? They won't. And if they do, the restraining order will be in place by the end of the day. Just as I said that, my phone lit up. Mom, my mother was calling. I stared at the screen. Sienna looked at me, waiting. I answered. Scarlett, came her voice, sweet and falsely concerned. We heard you left so suddenly last night. Is everything all right? I paused. You know why I left. A silence. I'm not sure I do, she said carefully. You seemed upset. Was it something someone said? I laughed, a sharp, joyless sound. I know about the missing medication. Mom. About the lilies. About the man Lucas sent to tamper with my bag. I know what you were trying to do. Another pause. Then, oh, Scarlett, you're being dramatic again. There it was. That word, dramatic. I let it hang for a beat. Then I dropped the hammer. I filed a restraining order. I said flatly, all 3 of you banned from coming near me or contacting me again. I've also protected every asset. You can't touch a cent. Her mask slipped for a second. I heard it in her tone. You think you can cut off your own family over a misunderstanding? Don't call again, I said. If you do, it goes straight to law enforcement. I ended the call. Sienna let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. You did it, she said. I shook my head. We did it. But it wasn't over. 2 days later, a legal courier showed up at the front gate documents from my father's lawyer. He was contesting the restraining order, claiming emotional distress, false accusations, and misunderstandings stemming from a known history of anxiety. Typical. They were going to gaslight me until the bitter end. I handed the papers to James. He barely blinked. "They'll lose," he said. "Let them try." Meanwhile, news of the case had leaked to a few media outlets, an anonymous source. No doubt. A local online blog ran the headline, "Mental Health CEO Claims Her Own Family Tried to Kill Her at Anniversary Party." I ignored it. Let them twist the story. I had my truth. And most importantly, I had my daughter. A week later, as I stood on the balcony overlooking the sea, Sienna stepped beside me. "The police want to speak with me," she said softly, "about what I saw." I looked at her. "Are you okay with that?" She nodded. "I want to. If they ask me why I recorded him, I'll say, because I didn't want to lose my mom." I pulled her into a hug. No lawsuit, no article. No inheritance was ever worth more than this girl, my daughter, my protector. And in her, I saw the legacy I truly cared about. Not power, not control, but truth and survival. The morning after Sienna gave her statement to the police, I felt something shift. It wasn't the end, not even close. There were still calls to field, emails from legal teams, damage control meetings with the board of ClearPath. But deep down, something fundamental had changed. I no longer cared about keeping the peace. I wasn't going to soften the truth. I wasn't going to smile through betrayal. I was done playing the obedient daughter in a family that never really wanted me whole, only compliant. That morning, I stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee while Sienna flipped through a novel at the dining table. The sky outside was muted with fog, but inside, our home was calm. "Did you sleep okay?" I asked. Sienna nodded. "Better. I think giving the statement helped." She looked at me for a long moment before adding, "Do you think they'll ever really stop?" I set the mug down. "They will, because I'll make sure they do." I meant it. Later that afternoon, I met with James in person at his firm's Monterey office. We sat in a glass conference room overlooking the ocean, thick case folders and digital documents arrayed between us. "I've officially finalized the trust," he said. "Everything ClearPath shares. The house. Liquid assets is now protected and unreachable without your direct consent or upon your passing, at which point it transfers entirely to Sienna." I signed the final page without hesitation. He pushed another folder forward. "The restraining order is being escalated from temporary to permanent. Given the evidence, the audio recording, your daughter's testimony, your medical history, and the recent attempted contestation by your father, this will hold, especially now that we've filed formal charges." I paused. "You really think the charges will stick?" James didn't flinch. "With the evidence we have, absolutely. The district attorney's office already flagged it for review under conspiracy to endanger, plus theft of a prescribed medical device. If the server flips and admits he was paid, he didn't need to finish. My parents and Lucas were walking a very thin line, and I was done protecting them from falling off it." James looked at me, more gently this time. "Scarlett, I've known you a long time. I know how hard this is for you." "No," I said. "It used to be, but not anymore." He nodded. "Good." Before I left, I handed him one final envelope. Inside were photographs, family portraits, old letters, a copy of my birth certificate. "Can you store this with the trust?" I asked, "in case Sienna wants them someday. But I don't want them here." He took the envelope without a word. That evening, I opened my laptop and drafted a letter. Not a legal letter, not a statement for court, just the truth. I addressed it to no one in particular, but in my heart, It was for them, for my mother, my father, and for the boy my brother used to be before bitterness took over. You taught me early that silence was survival, that strength was submission, that love was earned through obedience. I believed you for too long, but no more. You didn't raise a daughter, you trained a hostage. And when I finally escaped, you waited, watched. And when I had something to lose, you tried to take it. You failed. Not because of me, but because of her. Because Sienna is everything you never valued: honest, perceptive, brave. She saw the darkness I tried to ignore, and she pulled me out before it consumed us both. We are not yours anymore. I saved the letter, not intending to send it, just needing to write it. For myself. For closure. 2 days later, I received a voicemail from Lucas. It was short, angry. You're really doing this. You're ruining the family. Scar. You're going to destroy everything over a misunderstanding, over some stupid allergy story. What happened to loyalty, loyalty? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I didn't call back. Instead, I blocked his number, along with both of my parents. The only contact they'd have now was through legal representation. Sienna saw me do it. She didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She just nodded. "That's good," she said quietly. "That's safe." By the end of the week, it was done. The restraining orders were granted. The trust was legally locked. The charges were filed and acknowledged by the local DA's office. Every loose thread, financial, legal, emotional, was cut clean. I thought I'd feel relief. But what I really felt was grief. Grief not for the people they were, but for the fantasy I had clung to for years. That maybe someday they'd change. That if I just succeeded enough, proved myself enough, they'd love me the right way. Letting go of that illusion hurt more than I expected, but it was also the most liberating thing I'd ever done. That night, as Sienna and I sat on the couch watching an old movie, she leaned her head against my shoulder. "I know it's weird to say," she murmured, "but I'm glad it happened." I looked down at her. Glad what happened? The party, the flowers, everything. Because now, I know who they really are, and I know what kind of woman you are. I swallowed hard. "You're brave, Mom," she whispered. "And now I don't have to wonder about them, about what's safe. I just know," I kissed the top of her head, "you're brave too, baby. You saved me." We didn't speak again for the rest of the movie. But I held her close. Not just like a mother, but like someone holding the most precious proof that life, even when shattered, can be rebuilt with truth, with fire, and with love. Weeks passed, not all at once and not easily. Healing never happens on a schedule. It comes in slow, unpredictable waves like grief or forgiveness for days. I moved through the house in a kind of quiet autopilot. The adrenaline had worn off. The legal matters were largely handled. There were no more surprise calls, no more strangers at the gate. But the silence left space for the ache to settle. Not just the ache of betrayal, but the ache of finally accepting it. Sienna, on the other hand, surprised me every day. She didn't shrink back from the truth. She carried it, not like a burden, but like armor. She threw herself into school projects, rejoined her virtual book club, and even started writing poetry again, short, emotional verses scribbled in the margins of her notebooks. One evening, I found a small folded page on my desk, a poem, no title, no signature, just this. She saw the fire before it lit the room and screamed, not from fear but from instinct. Because when you love someone, you don't wait to see if the smoke is real. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words. She didn't need to sign it. I knew it was hers. I felt it in my bones. That same week, I received a message from Sienna's literature teacher. It was polite and thoughtful, thanking me for allowing Sienna to miss a few classes during the investigation, and expressing admiration for how brave Sienna had been in sharing her side of the story. At the bottom of the message, there was a personal note also. I recently reviewed Sienna's midterm essay. It was one of the most emotionally honest pieces I've read all year. You've clearly raised a remarkable young woman. Harper Bennett Harper. That name struck something in me. I remembered Sienna mentioning her in passing. Miss Bennett always says every story has more than one ending. She once told me, she says sometimes we're the author and sometimes we're the survivor. Or both. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. But now, I was curious. A week later, I finally met Harper in person. It happened at Sienna's school during a small community book night the English department hosted. I didn't plan to stay long, just wanted to quietly show support, maybe browse a few tables of recommended titles. But as soon as I stepped into the library, I saw her. She was standing near a reading display, tall and composed, her honey brown hair swept into a loose bun, glasses perched on her nose, and a cup of tea in one hand. She wore a charcoal gray sweater and black boots, simple, but elegant. When she turned and saw me, she smiled instantly. "Ms. Hayes," she asked, walking over. "I'm Harper Bennett." I shook her hand. It was warm, confident. "It's good to finally meet you," I said. "Sienna speaks highly of you. She's a remarkable student," Harper replied. "Sharp, thoughtful, empathetic. Honestly, she challenges me in the best ways." There was something in the way she said that, gentle, but steady, that made me pause. Most teachers were polite. Few were genuine. But Harper didn't seem like she was trying to impress me. She was just present. We talked for a while. About books, about teenagers, about resilience. At one point, I mentioned the ordeal Sienna and I had been through carefully, cautiously. Harper didn't press for details. Instead, she said, "I've learned the most extraordinary people are usually the ones who've had to rebuild from ashes. They see the world differently." I blinked. "Are you one of those people?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Maybe. But tonight's not about me. It's about your daughter." Later, as the event wound down, Harper handed me a small card. "I run a weekly writing circle for adults," she said. "It's nothing formal, just a group of people who write for healing, for growth. If you're ever interested, there's always a chair." I looked down at the card, a soft cream design, the name of the circle printed in serif font, ink, and embers. I ran my thumb along the edge. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. The following Sunday I went, not because I needed new friends, not because I wanted to write again, but because for the first time in a long time I felt invited. Not summoned, not pressured, not manipulated, invited. The group met in a cozy bookstore cafe tucked between a plant shop and a yoga studio. Harper greeted me with a warm smile and a soft seat by the window. We didn't talk much that first session. We just wrote, and it felt good. Strange, but good. Each week after that, I returned. Harper didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. She didn't offer cliches or pity. She simply showed up with steady presence, quiet encouragement, and a kind of patience that allowed space for grief to breathe without rushing it. One evening, after a session, she walked me to my car. We stood under the soft glow of the streetlight, the sound of waves faint in the distance. "Scarlett," she said gently, "you don't have to say yes, but I'd really enjoy your company sometime. Outside of writing." I hesitated. It wasn't fear that held me back, but something else. Something tender. "Okay," I said finally. "I'd like that." Sienna noticed, of course. She always did. A few days later, while we made dinner together, she leaned over the cutting board and said, "You like her?" It wasn't a question. I didn't deny it. She's safe. I said, she feels honest. Sienna nodded. I like her too. Then she grinned. Don't mess it up. I laughed, for real this time, loud and unfiltered. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe even years. Hope. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never announces itself with a bang, it tiptoes in, quietly, like morning light slipping past the curtains. Months passed. Spring bloomed along the Monterey coast, and with it came small rituals of peace, morning tea with Sienna on the balcony, quiet walks along the shore, Sunday writing sessions at Ink and Embers where Harper sat beside me, her presence as gentle as the sea breeze. Sienna thrived. She joined her school's debate team, started a fiction blog, and read everything from Vonnegut to contemporary memoirs. Some nights, I'd find her curled up on the couch with a novel and a highlighter, completely immersed. She was safe, joyful even when quiet. The shadows her grandparents left in her life had begun to fade. As for me, I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped asking myself why people who claimed to love me had tried to hurt me. Some questions don't need answers. What mattered was what I built after, not despite the betrayal, but because of it. One afternoon, as Sienna and I walked along the beach, she reached down, picked up a smooth stone, and skipped it across the water. She turned to me. "Do you ever miss them?" she asked softly. The question caught me off guard. Not because it was unfair, but because it was honest. And that's what she deserved in return. Sometimes, I said, but not the way they were. I miss what I wished they could be. That's different. She nodded thoughtfully. I used to wonder if I did something wrong. She admitted. My heart tightened. You didn't, I said firmly. None of this was your fault. And neither of us deserved it. She looked up at me, her eyes steady. I know. I'm glad I saw it clearly. Before it was too late. I pulled her into a hug, the wind wrapping around us like a second embrace. You saved me, Sienna. You didn't just see the fire, you pulled me out of it. Later that evening, Harper joined us for dinner. We cooked together in the kitchen, Sienna making her famous garlic pasta while Harper and I chopped vegetables side by side. There was music playing, soft and jazzy, and laughter that came without effort. At one point, Harper looked over at me while Sienna recited a ridiculous poem she'd written for fun, and I saw it in her eyes. Love. Quiet. Patient. Whole. Not to replace the past, but to begin something entirely new. And for the first time, I let myself feel it too. Not just the pain behind me, but the life ahead of me. As we sat on the rooftop afterward, watching the stars blink awake, Sienna curled beside me, her head on my shoulder, and Harper reached across to take my hand. This, I said quietly, is family? Not the one I was born into, but the one I built, the one that saved me, the one I'd die to protect. Sienna looked up at me and smiled. I think Mom would be proud of you, she said. I blinked. You mean, me as a mom, no, she said gently. Your mom, the one you never really got to have? The version you wish she could be? I swallowed hard, the sting in my throat sharp but clean. Maybe, I whispered. Maybe she lives here now in the way I love you. And that was the truth. Because blood doesn't define family. Choice does. And the woman I had become wasn't shaped by their cruelty. She was built from the courage it took to walk away. And the love that pulled me back into the light.